Flashing lights stop Dr. Amara Ellis, a black woman in a Lexus. Drug rep? The officer scoffs, dismissing her cool composure. But shock ripples through him when the 6-foot woman steps out, not with contraband, but revealing a stunning diplomatic security service badge. Experience the raw tension as systemic bias crashes head-on against federal authority, sparking a national outcry. Can her credentials shield her from prejudice? Discover the story that demands attention. The Georgia sun, even in late afternoon, beat down with a stubborn intensity, turning the asphalt ribbon of I-85 into a shimmering mirage. Inside the cool sanctuary of her obsidian Lexus SUV, Dr. Amara Ellis adjusted the knot of her silk head wrap, a vibrant pattern of blues and golds that spoke of distant shores. Nina Simone's voice, rich and resonant as aged bourbon, filled the cabin. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. Amara hummed along, a low, contemplative sound that harmonized with the piano chords. She was on her way to Hartsfield-Jackson, a familiar trajectory. Nairobi awaited, another mission, another intricate dance of diplomacy and security in a world perpetually off balance. At 38, Amara moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had navigated corridors of power from Detroit's west side to the gilded halls of Foggy Bottom. A rising star in the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service, the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, or DSS, she specialized in the unseen threats, the digital ghosts and cyber intrusions that were the new frontiers of international conflict. Her mind was already shifting gears, reviewing encryption protocols and threat assessments for the embassy staff in Kenya. A flicker of gold caught her eye in the rearview mirror, the pendant resting against the cream silk of her blouse. It was an Adinkra symbol, Fahodi, signifying independence, freedom, emancipation. A gift from her grandmother, May, a woman whose footsteps still echoed on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Justice, May had always said, wasn't a destination, but the road itself, demanding constant vigilance. Then, another light flickered, harsher, colder. Blue strobed against the polished black finish of the Lexus, reflecting insistently in the mirror. Amara's hum died in her throat. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She checked her speed. 68 in a 65 zone, flowing with traffic. Not egregious, not usually warranting this, but experience, etched deep beneath the surface of her diplomatic calm, whispered a different narrative. She signaled, smoothly guiding the SUV onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching softly under the tires. She cut the engine, plunging the cabin into a sudden, heavy silence broken only by the receding thrum of highway traffic and the approaching footsteps. In the side mirror, she saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, the khaki uniform of the Atlanta Police Department stark against the wilting greenery. Oakley sunglasses obscured his eyes, reflecting the sky like twin voids. His neck, below the clipped line of his sandy hair, was a deep, angry red, the mark of long hours under the Georgia sun. His hand rested almost casually on the butt of his service weapon. Amara took a slow, deliberate breath, centering herself. She pressed the button to lower her window, the whirring sound unnaturally loud. License and registration. The voice was flat, devoid of greeting or preamble. Pure Georgia drawl, tight with authority. Amara reached into her structured leather purse resting on the passenger seat. Her movements were fluid, unhurried. She retrieved her wallet and the vehicle registration from the glove compartment. Her diplomatic security service identification, encased in its leather holder, lay clearly visible in the open purse. She handed the documents over. The officer, his name tag read B. Collins, took them, his gaze flicking from the papers to her face, then lingering on the car's interior. He squinted at the registration. This a rental? Owned, Amara replied, her voice cool, level. She met the unseen eyes behind the sunglasses. He grunted, turning back toward his patrol car. Dispatch, got a Georgia tag, Victor Echo 9er, 7 Kilo Zulu. Black Lexus SUV, I-85 northbound near Cleveland Avenue. While Collins relayed the information, his partner approached the passenger side. Younger, maybe late 20s, with dark hair slicked back and a neatly trimmed mustache. His name tag read L. Rivera. He leaned down slightly, his eyes catching the glint of the gold shield and credentials in Amara's open purse. His posture shifted, a subtle flicker of recognition, perhaps unease. Ma'am, Rivera began, his voice softer than his partner's, carrying a distinct Puerto Rican accent. Are you with the State Department? Before Amara could respond, Collins was back, thrusting her license and registration through the window. Dispatch had clearly confirmed the vehicle was registered to Dr. Amara Ellis, Atlanta, Georgia. But the confirmation seemed to fuel, rather than quell, his suspicion. "Where'd you get that kind of car?" Collins demanded, his tone hardening, dripping with insinuation. He jerked his chin towards the Lexus. "You a drug rep or something?" Something inside Amara, a tightly coiled spring of weariness and indignation, snapped. Years of navigating microaggressions in diplomatic circles, of proving herself repeatedly against lowered expectations, of swallowing the casual sexism and racism that permeated even the highest echelons. It all coalesced into a single point of sharp, cold anger. But her training held. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford, professionally or personally. Slowly, deliberately, she unbuckled her seatbelt. She opened the heavy door and stepped out of the SUV. She was tall, just shy of 6 feet, and the tailored navy pantsuit she wore accentuated her height. She stood fully, drawing herself up, letting the humid air press against her skin. The disparity was immediate, the rumpled, sun-beaten officer staring up at the composed, impeccably dressed black woman. She reached into her purse, retrieved the leather holder, and flipped it open, displaying the shield and credentials prominently. The gold eagle seemed to catch the afternoon light, radiating authority. "Special Agent Amara Ellis," she stated, her voice clear, resonant, cutting through the highway noise. "United States Department of State Diplomatic Security Service." She met Collins' hostile gaze directly. "You are currently delaying a federal employee en route to an official international assignment. State your probable cause for the stop, officer." Rivera took an involuntary step back, his face paling visibly. He looked from Amara's badge to his partner, a silent plea in his eyes. Collins' face tightened, the sunburn on his neck deepening. He scoffed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "Bullshit. That's gotta be fake." He took a step closer, invading her space. "Let me see that." "You've seen it, officer," Amara said, holding her ground, her voice dropping to a steely quiet. "Now, I need your name and badge number, and that of your partner. And I need your supervisor called to the scene immediately." The standoff hung in the thick air, charged and volatile. Collins bristled, his hand tightening on his holster. Rivera shifted uncomfortably, torn between protocol, fear, and the undeniable evidence before him. Neither of them noticed the silver sedan that had slowed as it passed, nor the slim cell phone camera lens trained on them from the passenger window. Melissa Chin, a nurse on her way home from a long shift at Grady Hospital, felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. She'd seen this scene too many times, lived the fear vicariously through her husband, her brothers, her friends. She pressed record, her hand trembling slightly. The image was clear, the tall, defiant black woman in the power suit, the gleaming badge, the aggressive posture of the white officer, his partner's visible distress. By midnight, the clip, uploaded with a simple caption, "Atlanta Police Harassing State Department Agent?" #DSSVSCops #Atlanta had exploded. It ricocheted across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, news outlets scrambling to verify the identities. #DSSVSCops trended globally, a stark digital flare illuminating the grinding friction between institutional authority and the lived reality of race in America. Amara Ellis, DSS agent, was no longer just en route to Nairobi. She was at the epicenter of a storm. The scent of baking bread and lemon polish. That was the smell of home. The smell of Grandma May's duplex on Detroit's west side in 1998. Outside, the city hummed with a nervous energy. A place of stark contrasts, of Motown ghosts and automotive giants breathing their last, of resilience ground into the very pavement. Inside, 16-year-old Amara sat at the worn Formica kitchen table, surrounded by books, her brow furrowed in concentration. May Ellis stirred a pot of collard greens on the stove, her movements economical, practiced. Her hair, streaked with silver, was pulled back in a neat bun. She was a woman built of quiet strength, her face a map of sorrows endured and battles fought. She had marched with King, faced down dogs and fire hoses in Alabama, and carried the lessons of the struggle like sacred texts. She taught Amara the power of knowing one's history, the weight of legacy. "Speak soft, child," she'd often say, her voice a low murmur like the river, but carry truth like a shield. "Don't let them mistake your quiet for weakness. Still waters run deep, and sometimes they carve canyons." That year, Amara poured the quiet intensity into the city debate championship. The topic, the enduring relevance of Brown versus Board of Education. She stood before the judges, a lanky teenager in a borrowed blazer, her voice, initially hesitant, gaining strength as she dismantled arguments, weaving together legal precedent, historical context, and the lived experiences of her own community. She spoke of segregated schools not as relics of the past, but as persistent shadows shaping the present. She didn't just argue the case, she inhabited it. She won. But more significantly, her performance caught the attention of a woman in the audience, a recruiter for the State Department's Foreign Service, herself a product of the Detroit public school system. She saw in Amara not just intelligence, but a spark, a fierce commitment to justice tempered with a diplomat's nascent poise. An introduction was made, a path illuminated. Howard University was a revelation. An immersion in Black excellence, history, and possibility. The Mecca, they called it. It was there she met Fatima Hassan, her freshman roommate. Fatima was everything Amara wasn't: effervescent, outspoken, carrying the trauma of escaping war-torn Somalia with a fierce, unyielding optimism. She'd seen the worst of humanity and still believed in the possibility of the best. They became inseparable, Amara the strategist, Fatima the heart. Fatima listened patiently to Amara's burgeoning dreams of diplomatic service, of changing the system from within. But she offered a constant, necessary reality check. Lounging on their dorm room floor, surrounded by textbooks and takeout containers, Fatima once fixed Amara with her penetrating gaze. "Amara, my sister," she'd said, her accent adding weight to her words. "You have a good heart and a brilliant mind. You believe in the rules, the protocols, the power of persuasion. But remember this, you can't diplomacy your way out of racism. Sometimes the structure itself is the problem, not the players." The words stayed with Amara, a counterpoint to her own determined ascent. Her path led not to the Foreign Service but to the Diplomatic Security Service. The idea of protection, of safeguarding the people and places representing America abroad, resonated deeply. It felt tangible, necessary. Yet, the challenges began almost immediately. Riyadh, 2015. Assigned to the Regional Security Office at the U.S. Embassy, Amara found herself navigating a labyrinth of cultural complexities and entrenched patriarchal attitudes. Saudi officials often directed comments past her, addressing her male colleagues even when she was the lead on a security assessment. She endured thinly veiled slurs about women's capabilities, polite dismissals couched in cultural relativism. More grating, perhaps, was the condescension from within her own ranks. Her supervisor, a veteran agent named Peterson, a man whose worldview seemed cemented somewhere in the Cold War era, constantly tried to sideline her. "Ellis," he drawled one afternoon after she presented a meticulously researched report on vulnerabilities in the embassy's perimeter security. "Good work on the details. Why don't you focus on the paperwork side of things for a while? Leave the fieldwork to the guys who are suited for it." The implication hung in the air-conditioned silence of his office. Amara met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Sir," she replied, her voice dangerously soft, echoing May's advice, "my analysis identifies 3 critical breaches that require immediate attention. Ignoring them would be negligent. I've already drafted the remediation plan." She didn't back down. She didn't stick to paperwork. She earned respect, grudgingly at first, then genuinely through sheer competence and unwavering professionalism. By 2022, she was back in Washington, leading complex cybersecurity operations. Her team thwarted sophisticated state-sponsored hacking attempts aimed at disrupting American elections, traced digital footprints across continents, built firewalls against invisible enemies. Her successes were lauded, her expertise undeniable. Yet the shadow persisted. The subtle digs, the surprise masking faint insult. "You're so articulate," a senior official remarked after a particularly complex briefing, as if eloquence were an unexpected anomaly. "Where did you really learn cybersecurity?" another colleague asked, unable to reconcile her Detroit roots with her technical mastery. "You handle pressure remarkably well for a Black woman from Detroit," someone else commented, meaning it somehow as a compliment. Each instance was a pinprick, insignificant on its own, but collectively forming a tapestry of bias. They saw the badge, the title, the achievements. But they still saw, first and foremost, a Black woman, an outsider who had somehow infiltrated their world, whose presence required explanation, whose excellence demanded qualification. Fatima's words echoed, "You can't diplomacy your way out of racism." Amara had built a career on navigating complex systems, on finding common ground, on using language as both shield and bridge. She carried her credentials like armor. But the incident on I-85 was a brutal reminder. Sometimes the armor wasn't enough. Sometimes the system itself saw only the skin, not the shield it contained. The road here had been long, paved with hard-won victories and subtle, persistent slights. The road ahead, she suspected, was about to become far more treacherous. 1 week after the flashing blue lights shattered her journey, the glare was different, brighter, more invasive. Camera flashes popped like angry fireflies outside Atlanta Police Headquarters, a monolithic building of concrete and glass that seemed to absorb the city's simmering tensions. Protesters thronged the sidewalks, their signs held high. Badge is not a shield for bias. Hashtag Black Diplomats Matter. APD. Accountability now. Their chants rose and fell in rhythmic waves, a chorus of frustration demanding to be heard. Inside, the air conditioning hummed, a sterile counterpoint to the heat outside and the simmering emotions within. Amara sat at a long, polished table in a sparsely decorated conference room. Across from her sat officers Brady Collins and Luis Rivera. Flanking them were two union representatives, their expressions carefully neutral, and Assistant Chief Miller, a man whose weary eyes suggested he'd presided over too many meetings like this. Chief Frank Ramirez, a man whose stern, ex-Marine bearing usually commanded instant respect, stood near the window looking out at the growing crowd, his jaw tight. Ramirez, a second-generation Mexican-American who had climbed the ranks facing his own set of prejudices, was caught in the crossfire, the viral video, the global outcry. The demands for action colliding with the fierce loyalty and defensiveness of the Blue Wall. The meeting was billed as a conciliation session, a standard bureaucratic step in the department's internal affairs process. Amara knew it was mostly theater, a performance of due process. Real conciliation felt galaxies away. Collins leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, the picture of defiant nonchalance. The Oakleys were gone, revealing pale blue eyes that held no trace of remorse. A smirk played on his lips. "Look," he began, his voice carrying the same dismissive edge as it had on the highway shoulder, "we get it. Things got tense. But you people are always so quick to play the race card. I was doing my job, you people." The phrase landed like a physical blow. Amara kept her composure, her gaze steady. She slid a file across the table. It contained a summary of Officer Collins' complaint history, meticulously compiled by her cousin Marcus, already preparing for the inevitable legal battle. "Officer Collins," Amara said, her voice calm but edged with steel, "according to department records, you have received 23 citizen complaints over the past 10 years. 17 alleged bias policing or excessive force. All were investigated internally. All were dismissed." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Furthermore, analysis of your traffic stops over the last 12 months shows you initiated stops of 74 black drivers in your assigned zone. Of those 74 stops, precisely one resulted in an arrest for drug possession. Your stated reason for stopping me was suspicion of driving a stolen vehicle, quickly proven false, followed by an unfounded accusation of drug trafficking. Please explain to me how race wasn't a factor." Collins' smirk faltered. He sputtered, That's taken out of context. Those complaints were bogus. You look for trouble, you find it." Amara turned her attention to Rivera. The younger officer sat rigidly, staring down at his clasped hands. He looked physically ill. "Officer Rivera," Amara said, her tone softening slightly, recognizing the different energy emanating from him, not malice, but a paralyzing fear. "You saw my credentials. You started to acknowledge them. Why didn't you intervene when your partner escalated the situation?" Rivera swallowed hard. He glanced nervously at Collins, then at the union reps. It happened fast," he mumbled. "Look, I wanted to say something. To tell him to check the credentials properly. But the job, you know how it is. You don't question your partner in the field like that. It's complicated." "Silence is a choice," Officer Amara replied quietly but firmly. "Complicity is a choice." She saw the flicker of shame in his eyes before he looked away again. Later that week, the Atlanta City Council convened a special hearing on police conduct and racial profiling. The chamber buzzed with tension, packed with concerned citizens, activists, and media. Melissa Chin, the nurse who had filmed the encounter, stood nervously at the podium. Her voice trembled initially but gained strength as she spoke. "My name is Melissa Chin. I'm a registered nurse at Grady." She paused, taking a breath. "I filmed the incident involving Dr. Ellis because it felt terrifyingly familiar. My husband is black. He's a software engineer. He drives a nice car that he worked hard for. In the past 5 years, he has been pulled over by police 7 times. 7. Never ticketed. Never arrested. Just stopped. Questioned. Made to feel like a suspect in his own life." She looked directly at the council members, her eyes pleading. "Each time I worry, will this be the time it goes wrong? Will a misunderstanding escalate? Will he come home? When I saw Officer Collins approach Dr. Ellis's car, the way he carried himself, the immediate suspicion in his voice, I saw the same pattern. Her credentials didn't matter. Her suit didn't matter. Her calm demeanor didn't matter. All they seemed to see was a black person in a luxury car, and they assumed the worst. I recorded it because someone needed to see. Someone needed to bear witness. Her testimony resonated through the chamber, a powerful echo of Amara's own experience. It wasn't just about one stop, one officer, one DSS agent. It was about a pervasive, corrosive assumption of guilt based on skin color, a systemic bias that turned driving while black into a perpetual audition for innocence. The reckoning had begun, not just for Collins and Rivera, but for the entire Atlanta Police Department and perhaps for the city itself. The sterile grandeur of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia felt both imposing and strangely intimate. Sunlight streamed through the tall, arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. But the atmosphere inside was thick with anticipation. This wasn't just another civil suit. It was a crucible. Dr. Amara Ellis versus Atlanta Police Department, Officer Brady Collins, et al. The case had become a national focal point, a legal battleground where issues of racial profiling, police accountability, and the very meaning of equal protection under the law were being fiercely contested. Representing Amara was her cousin, Marcus Ellis. Sharp, meticulous, and radiating a quiet intensity, Marcus had built a formidable reputation as a civil rights attorney in Atlanta. He moved with a dancer's grace, his tailored suits impeccable, his arguments precise and devastating. Growing up alongside Amara in Detroit, sharing family histories steeped in the struggle for justice, their bond was deep. He was family, but he was also a fierce advocate, his identity as a queer black man informing his deep understanding of intersectional discrimination. Seeing Amara, his brilliant, accomplished cousin, subjected to such blatant profiling had ignited a righteous fire in him. This case, Marcus declared in his opening statement, his voice resonating through the courtroom, is about a fundamental promise. The promise that the shield of citizenship, the rights afforded to every American, are not contingent on the color of one's skin. Dr. Ellis, a decorated federal agent serving her country, was treated not as a respected professional, but as a presumed criminal solely because she is a black woman driving a luxury vehicle. We will demonstrate a pattern and practice of racial bias within the APD exemplified by Officer Collins' actions that violates not only Dr. Ellis's constitutional rights but the trust placed in law enforcement by the community it swears to protect. The trial unfolded over weeks, gripping the nation. News channels provided nightly updates, commentators dissected every testimony, every piece of evidence. The defense portrayed Collins as a veteran officer making a split-second judgment call in a high-crime area, arguing that Amara's reaction, her perceived assertiveness, had escalated the situation. They painted her lawsuit as opportunistic, an attempt to leverage her position. But the evidence Marcus presented was damning. Statistics laid bare the stark racial disparities in Collins' traffic stops. Witness testimonies, including Melissa Chen's powerful account, painted a consistent picture of bias. Then came the Bodycam footage. Not just from the stop itself, which showed Collins' aggressive questioning and disbelief even after Rivera pointed out the badge, but footage recovered from earlier that same day. The prosecution played a clip recorded inadvertently while Collins and Rivera were grabbing lunch before their shift. Collins, unaware the camera was still recording audio, was bragging to Rivera about a previous stop. "Yeah, pulled over this kid in a beat-up Honda, blasting that rap crap," Collins' voice bragged, laced with contempt. "Kid looked shifty. Turned out he was clean, but you gotta trust your gut, you know? I sniff out thugs like dogs sniff drugs. Doesn't matter if they're in a hoopty or a damn Bentley. You just know." A collective gasp went through the courtroom. The raw, unapologetic bigotry hung in the air. Collins, sitting at the defense table, went rigid, his face flushing a mottled red. His lawyer buried his face in his hands. The trial became a magnet, drawing figures from Amara's past and present. Fatima Hassan, now a respected advisor on refugee resettlement at the United Nations in Geneva, flew in. Her presence was a quiet pillar of support for Amara. When called by Marcus as a character witness, she spoke not just of Amara's integrity and dedication, but broadened the perspective. "This isn't just about Dr. Amara Ellis," Fatima said, her voice clear and steady, addressing the jury directly. "It's about the corrosive effect of prejudice that transcends borders. It's about the Somali child profiled at a checkpoint, the Uyghur woman interrogated for her faith, the black student in America told they are too loud, too ambitious, too much to belong. Dr. Ellis's experience is a reflection of a global struggle for dignity and recognition. Her refusal to be silenced is an act of courage that resonates far beyond this courtroom. The most poignant moment, however, came from an unexpected source. Brady Collins' daughter, Emily, a 19-year-old art student with eyes that held a mixture of her father's blue and a weary sadness, attended the trial daily, sitting quietly in the back row. One evening, reporters captured a tense exchange outside the courthouse. "Dad, I listened today." Emily's voice was strained, barely audible above the street noise. "That Bodycam, the things you said. Is this why Mom left? Is this who you are?" Collins turned away, his face a mask of anger and shame, unable to meet his daughter's searching gaze. The image spoke volumes about the personal wreckage left in the wake of entrenched prejudice. The verdict, when it came, felt less like a victory and more like a weary step forward. The jury found a pattern of bias in Collins' actions and negligence in the department's supervision and training. They awarded Amara damages, but more significantly, the judge mandated sweeping changes within the APD, including the implementation of comprehensive, ongoing implicit bias training incorporating biometric feedback to measure physiological responses, robust disciplinary measures for officers with repeated complaints, and strengthened community oversight boards. Facing termination and potential criminal charges for perjury related to his initial incident report, Brady Collins resigned from the Atlanta Police Department. Luis Rivera, whose testimony corroborated key aspects of Amara's account, accepted a transfer to the department's Community Outreach Division, a move met with skepticism by activists, but one Rivera claimed was a chance to bridge the gap he had failed to cross on that highway shoulder. The gavel fell, but the echoes of the trial lingered. It hadn't unraveled racism in America or even in Atlanta, but it had peeled back a layer, exposed a nerve, and forced a painful, public conversation. For Amara, the legal battle was over, but the larger fight, the one her grandmother May had waged, the one Fatima understood so well, continued. 6 months later, the equatorial sun warmed Nairobi, casting long shadows across the bustling terrace of a cafe fragrant with roasting coffee beans and cardamom. Amara sat at a small wrought iron table, sipping sweet, milky chai, a half-finished memo on global racial equity initiatives within diplomatic communities resting beside her laptop. The air hummed with a blend of Swahili, English, and French, a vibrant counterpoint to the tense quiet of the Atlanta courtroom. Her work here was demanding, focusing on strengthening security infrastructure while navigating the complex geopolitical landscape of East Africa. But she had also made it a personal mission to engage with local activists and leaders fighting against colorism, tribalism, and the lingering shadows of colonialism, issues that mirrored, in different hues, the struggles back home. The fight for justice, she understood more deeply than ever, was a global tapestry woven with common threads of prejudice and power imbalance. Her phone buzzed on the table. A text message from an unfamiliar number. "Dr. Ellis? It's Luis Rivera. Hope this message finds you well. Spoke at a high school career day in SW Atlanta today. Talked about policing, mistakes made, trying to build trust. Some kids asked about you, about the trial. Told them you stood up when it mattered. Told them you're the reason I'm trying to do better, be better. Just wanted you to know. L. Rivera." Amara read the message twice. A complex mix of emotions washed over her. Skepticism, weariness, but also a fragile flicker of hope. Change wasn't a thunderclap. It was a slow turning, often begun by a single voice, a single act of courage. Rivera's message wasn't absolution, but it was acknowledgement. It was a start. She didn't reply immediately, tucking the thought away for later consideration. Later that day, she navigated the controlled chaos of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, heading for a regional security conference in Addis Ababa. As she approached the security checkpoint, a Kenyan TSA agent, a woman with warm eyes and an official bearing, scanned her passport and then her diplomatic credentials. The agent's professional demeanor softened into a wide, welcoming smile. Mwana diplomasia. A diplomat. She looked at Amara with open recognition, perhaps having seen news coverage months ago, perhaps simply recognizing a fellow woman navigating official channels. "Welcome home, sister." Caribou, Kenya. Amara felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. Home. Here, her presence wasn't questioned, her credentials weren't doubted. Here, she was welcomed, seen. She returned the smile, genuine and unburdened. "Thank you. But I'm not quite a diplomat," she clarified gently, tapping the DSS shield. "I'm a protector of them." The agent nodded, her respect undiminished. "Even better. We need protectors. Safe journey. As Amara walked towards her gate, the vast expanse of the departure lounge stretching before her, she felt a sense of alignment, a settling of the turmoil that had churned within her since that day on I-85. The legal victory was important, the mandated changes necessary, but the true shift was internal. She no longer felt the need to constantly justify her presence, her authority. She simply was. Her phone pinged again. This time, it was a notification from a news alert service linking to a small article about youth activism in Detroit. Embedded in the article was a tweet from a high school student, just learned about Dr. Amara Ellis from Atlanta. State Department agent who sued the cops for profiling and won. Grew up blocks from my house. Grandma says she's our Harriet Tubman in heels. Hashtag Detroit Pride, hashtag Black Girl Magic, hashtag Justice for Amara. Harriet Tubman in heels. Amara stopped walking, a slow smile spreading across her face. The comparison was hyperbolic, humbling, yet deeply resonant. It spoke of legacy, of continuum, of the long, arduous road towards freedom paved by those who refuse to accept injustice, whether on darkened paths leading north or on sun-baked highway shoulders under hostile eyes. She straightened her shoulders, adjusted the strap of her carry-on, and walked towards the boarding gate, towards the next mission, the next challenge. The fight wasn't over, it merely shifted locations. The road May Ellis walked, the road Harriet Tubman forged, stretched onward. In the ledger of justice, credentials matter less than the courage to honor them. Thank you for watching Powerful Story Unfold. We hope her journey for justice resonated and brought value. If you believe these vital conversations matter, help keep them going. Please like, share this video, and subscribe for more impactful stories.